I've got a question for you. How does a piece of music survive 800 years without being intended to survive? We usually celebrate St. George's Day with pageantry and myth, but I think there's a deeper story to tell about what it actually meant to be English in the 13th century. If you could go back in time to 13th century England, you'd hear an awful lot of noise. You'd hear the harvest and the workers, the church bells and the shouting in the markets, but if you tried to find the music, the songs that actually defined the common man, you'd find almost nothing, because 99% of secular music from medieval England has been erased. Yet somehow, this one piece of parchment survived. It survived wars, the plague and the systematic destruction of the monasteries. It's almost a statistical impossibility we have it today. This is Summa Is Icumen In. I think I pronounced that right, but from now on I'll be referring to it as the Summer Canon, for obvious reasons. On paper, it's a relic of a lost world, a piece of vellum tucked away in the junk drawer of a monastic library, which if you had walked into in the 1500s, you would have seen thousands of books just like this one, ready to be burned in line with the king's orders. But this song survived the centuries, and it today remains as the oldest recorded piece of secular music in the British Isles. To understand why this is such a miracle, we have to first understand how 13th century scripture really works. In the 13th century, secular music for the common folk wasn't typically scripture to be saved, it was simply oral. It happened, and it was done, or maybe passed down through speech. Now, there are earlier fragments of music from England, mostly church-related, but the Summer Canon is different. It's the first time we see secular folk music written down with notation. As for the native Celtic music, well, forget trying to find concrete notation or lyrics. We do have ideas from ancient sources, but oral tradition was pretty much exclusive back then. Writing this on vellum was an absurd expense. Vellum was high quality, durable animal skin, basically the premium paper of the Middle Ages. You only used it for the church, or the law, or for historical records. You didn't waste it on a song about the weather, or a tune sung by workers in the fields, and yet, here we are. It was tucked into a miscellany, a chaotic, unorganised collection of religious tracts, medical recipes and notes, all bound together. It should have been scrapped off that vellum to make room for a tax record or a legal deed or something, but it wasn't. I mean, maybe the monk who kept the piece of parchment really liked this song. We don't actually know who wrote it, but it was stored in Reading Abbey for centuries in the care of the monks. Either way, that single lucky human impulse is a big reason as to why we have this window into the medieval sound of England. It's even more incredible when you consider that this wasn't just a challenge of organisation, it was a challenge of survival, because whilst vellum is durable, it is sensitive to the world around it, and the world was about to change very, very violently. For centuries, this manuscript sat quietly in the library of Reading Abbey, but then the 16th century arrived, and with it, the dissolution of the monasteries. Henry VIII didn't just want to break with the Pope, he wanted a complete religious overhaul in England. He viewed these monasteries as strongholds of opposition, and their libraries as warehouses of outdated ideas and religious resistance. He ordered the gold to be seized, the monks who opposed him executed, the stone repurposed, and the books? Well, many of the books were treated like trash. Thousands were sold to bookbinders, used to pack crates or simply used to fuel fires. Some important manuscript was destroyed or kept on purpose, however. The Summer Canon was really right in the line of fire. Reading Abbey was sacked, and its library was gutted. How did this scrap of parchment survive the purge? Well, it was likely mixed in with other random notes. It was never considered important enough to be hunted down, but never trivial enough to be discarded. It was hiding in plain sight, camouflaged within that junk drawer, ignored by the tax collectors and the king's men alike. But the manuscript wasn't safe yet. It survives the 1500s and the 1600s, the Enlightenment, only to face the Luftwaffe. By the time it reached the British Library, it was a national treasure, but it was still vulnerable. During the Blitz, the library was a direct target, sustaining much damage. And in the chaos of a city being torn apart, it was really just one stray incendiary bomb away from oblivion, but it survived. It almost feels like this text was destined to be erased. It survived the king, the war, and the slow decay of centuries, and yet it exists to this day. So what exactly was this monk hiding in the back of his library, and just why was it so important? Take a look on screen at the lyrics and what they mean. If you look past the ink and the fancy medieval font, it's not a religious hymn or a dry tax record, it's a round, meaning it's a song designed to be sung by 4 or 5 or, in this case, 6 people all at once, dancing in a circle typically. In the 13th century, this wouldn't have been seen the same as music as we see it today. It was a communal activity, to perform, not just to listen, a way to connect with others, to laugh and to celebrate the return of the sun. It's about the cuckoo and the goats and the simple joys of summer finally arriving after the winter. It's a very upbeat melody. It's a good reminder that we're living in a different time. Our instinct is to approach this as any other song on the radio, but we need to understand that this song existed at a time when community was inherently different, and that may be the secret. The reason this song survived may not be luck, it may be because it was so human. For centuries, history books have been filled with the important stuff. The kings, the generals, the list of documented taxpayers in a random village somewhere. But this manuscript proves that the people behind those books, despite living in a different age, were still human. They were singing about the weather, they were making jokes, they were finding joy in the middle of a hard life. The monk who slipped this into the library wasn't just saving a piece of vellum, maybe he was just saving a core memory. We spend an awful lot of time looking for the history of England in our monuments and our battlefields, but maybe the real soul of England isn't in the stones or the statues, maybe it's in the songs and the sounds we couldn't help but keep. The reflection of the people who lived here centuries ago, the ones that, against all odds, refused to be silenced. I wanted to talk about something English for St. George's Day, but I think this story is interesting enough on its own. If you want a deep dive into the music theory itself, I highly recommend checking out James Hargreaves' video on it. But for now, I've been Glass Gecko, and thank you so much for watching.
Parsley, sage, rosemary.